Welcome back to In Focus, everyone. 28-year-old Idaho murder suspect Bryan Kohberger arrived back in Idaho last night after he was taken into custody during a raid at his parents' house in Pennsylvania last week. Pennsylvania State Police Major Christopher Paris said during a press conference on Tuesday that force was used during the raid. Authorities reportedly broke windows and doors to gain access to the house. Paris said the suspect's parents were home at the time they executed the search warrant. Police then took Kohberger into custody in his hometown, where he signed an extradition document and waived his right to challenge his arrest. According to reports, Kohberger had driven home to Pennsylvania for the holidays while accompanied by his father. The suspect's attorney said Kohberger was pulled over twice in Indiana during that trip. Turns out that's correct. We have the body cam footage that shows the first time accused Idaho student murderer was pulled over on December 15th. Watch.
Take a look at your driver's license real quick if I could. Hold you over for tailgating. So y'all work at the university there?
I actually do work there.
Oh. Okay. But do me a favor, don't follow too close, okay?
Oh,
all right. Thank you. Appreciate you.
So you just heard his father mention that they were coming from Washington State University and that his son taught there. The Kohbergers referred to the Washington incident as a mass shooting, although only the suspect was shot by Washington's SWAT team. Kohberger is now being held at the Latah County Jail in Idaho as he faces 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary with the intent to commit murder for allegedly entering a 6-bedroom house, stabbing 4 University of Idaho students. Criminal defense attorney Bob Bianchi joins me now with updates on this case. Bob, thank you for being here. We had you on several times to discuss this when the case appeared to be cold. Thankfully, it looks like that they have got their guy. What's your take on where things stand now? Is the evidence does the evidence seem to be overwhelmingly against Kohberger that he did in fact commit these murders?
There's never enough evidence when you're handling a homicide prosecution, Addison. But as far as probable cause is concerned, the affidavit has just been released. He had his first preliminary hearing just moments ago, basically what they did is a very good job, thorough job. The main piece of evidence was DNA that was recovered from a knife sheath that was left behind on the bed of one of the victims. This explains why they were very specific about the kind of knife that they were looking for, because it was a knife that would fit that knife sheath. And when what they did, and I think we spoke about this before, is once they get the DNA, they went and they got, when somebody throws their trash away, they went to the parents' house, to the family house, and they got discarded trash and got the DNA from that trash, and they made a match up to 99% to this particular suspect, to this defendant, but it doesn't end there. There's also that white car that they were looking for. Well, really how this case broke was a very astute police officer when they had put an all-out alert to all law enforcement, and they said, look, we're looking for a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra, and a Washington State police officer that worked for the university, I believe from the affidavit, noticed a car in the parking lot matching that description. This is amazing police work. He then ran the identification of the individual, came up with the defendant who matched the description, Addison, of something we didn't know before. One of the people in the home had an encounter with him inside of the house. He was wearing a mask, and she couldn't identify anything other than about 6 foot tall or around that height, who had bushy eyebrows. And the detective noticed, the police officer noticed that when they ran the ID for the Hyundai, that this individual had bushy eyebrows. Then it led to the DNA. And then what I think is the most important thing, I know people think the DNA is really important. DNA can be in places for a lot of reasons. It's on the knife sheath. That's really good. We need to know more about whether or not there's DNA on the bodies and transfer evidence like we talked about before. There may be, and we just don't know yet. But the phone records, Addison, are brutal for the defendant in this case. Apparently, he had been stalking them for months with his phone pinging off cell phone towers at their location on at least 12 occasions. And on the night of the incident, he leaves his home. They were able to pinpoint at approximately 2:47 a.m. And what does he do? He shuts his phone off until after the car is seen driving away, and then the phone goes back on. That is a really powerful piece of circumstantial evidence that, in fact, it was specifically him. And of course, as I noted before, his DNA is on a knife sheath in a bed where there's a person murdered. So it's a strong circumstantial case right now.
Now, his family, Kohlberger's family, has reportedly been shocked about all of this. They're saying they never saw any of this coming. They can't believe that he's being accused of murder, and that police have the wrong guy. They're either very convinced of it or they're playing a charade, Bob. Which one do you think it is? Obviously, you know, you would understand a family being shocked about something like this, but do you think that they maybe know more than they're letting on?
You know, I could just go, I can't tell you what's in their minds, Addison, but I can just go on my experience. And I've handled 1 or 2 serial murder cases as a prosecutor. And I saw that the family actually wound up in one of them testifying as my main witness in the case. But there was shock and disbelief. They just didn't see maybe some strangeness and oddity in the individual. But obviously, this is a crime of incredible magnitude and gravity. And this is an individual who's not stupid. He's a bright person. He's got a master's degree and he's going for his doctorate degree. So these individuals typically have an ability to put on 2 faces, one forward-facing, perspective in front of the public and their family and friends, and then a dark side of them that they often don't let out to other people. And they're very convincing because they are smart. And this kind of fits a profile type of individuals you see like this. So I'm going to give the family, honestly, a benefit of a doubt based on my training experience and my life's experience as a prosecutor handling homicide cases, that most times the families are genuinely in shock about something like this.
Now, the death penalty, people are saying, is something that could be on the table for a case like this. Certainly a lot of people would feel that would be true justice if he's found guilty. What do you see, just with your prosecutorial experience, Bob, what options do you see on the table? Is the death penalty one of them if he is found guilty?
Absolutely. I mean, I've always said this about the death penalty. I mean, when you look at a case like this, if the death penalty isn't for this, then what kind of case is it for? I mean, legally, we look at what they call aggravating factors under the statute of Idaho law. I don't have it in front of me, but typically speaking, one of them is felony murder. If during the course of a felony somebody dies, that is what they call an aggravating factor in favor of the death penalty. Well, here they've got a felony murder count. I don't think it was put in there for no reason. It was put in there because it fits the case and it justifies an aggravating factor. Also, vulnerability of individuals, the number of individuals, the cruel and heinous way in which a crime is committed are all types of aggravating factors. So a prosecutor looks at it and says, is this I mean, in the end, the prosecutor looks at this and says, is this the kind of case that if I go before a jury, will 12 individuals, after they listen to this, put the ultimate penalty on this person and give them the death penalty? And I think it's a very good death penalty case. The only question I have in my mind right now, Addison, is what's the name of the game in terms of the legal antics that go on between the prosecution and defense? I wouldn't be shocked if the defense attorney, after they review the evidence, goes to the defendant and says, listen, do you want me to negotiate you out of the death penalty with a plea for a life in prison sentence and a full statement as to the reasons, explanations, wherefores, and how comes that this occurred? And then they go to the prosecutor and they say, would you be willing to take it out of the death penalty? I can tell you that becomes a very individual decision. Yours truly did not plea bargain murder cases. I did not believe in it. I believe that if it was a case that should be a murder case, I'm not going to plea it to a manslaughter case. And the worst that happens, I go in front of a jury. If I have strong evidence, I win the case. And if I don't, so be it. And in my career, at least, thankfully, none of them were found to be not guilty. It's a strong case. The prosecution's in the catbird seat here. It's a case of public attention. 4 young lives were brutally snuffed out by an individual who's been stalking them for 12 occasions over a period of months, die in the way that they died. Goes about his life like nothing, no remorse, no fear, no concerns. This is perfect for the death penalty as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Bob, we have one more story I want to get your comments on real quick before we go. A Louisiana man has launched a class action complaint against Southwest Airlines over holiday cancellation chaos. This is Eric Capdeville. As we know, thousands and thousands of Southwest flights were canceled. The vast majority of their flights were canceled during the holiday season. What do you think about people suing over this? Obviously, Southwest has got to have something in their terms of service and whatnot that they're subject to cancellation without repercussion. But do you think that people would have any sort of a case here? What would be that angle?
Well, the caveat here is I haven't looked at the terms of service, as you indicate, and that's very important. It's a contractual right. I give you this, you give me that. But I think that this really comes down to one more of public opinion. When the companies look at a suit like this, sometimes they pay just for the get out of the scenario because the negative publicity is worse than what the individual is looking for. But I don't think, from a legal point of view, to go back to it, even if terms of service indicate that they're not responsible for something like this, a court could potentially look at it and say, you know what? That is, if there's a normal interruption of service from a normal kind of activity, that's basic negligence, things of that nature. But this is so grotesquely out of the ordinary, they may allow a person to escape those provisions. I say most likely, Addison, though, this is a case that's not going to wind up being ultimately litigated. The lawyers are going to get together and they're going to come up with a settlement.
Well, Bob Bianchi, appreciate you weighing in on the legal issues of the day. Thank you so much. Always great to have you.
Great. Thank you, Addison.